Whenever people talk about mysterious animals, bats always seem to come up not just because they fly, but because they're linked to all sorts of viruses. It's almost like they're nature's secret vault for diseases.
What I find wild is that despite that scary reputation, bats are crucial to so many ecosystems. But you're right, the fact that they can carry so many viruses without getting sick themselves really puzzles researchers.
Exactly. It's almost like they're superheroes with a hidden power. But scientists are still trying to figure out why bats are able to handle viruses that would make most animals or us very sick.
That's actually one of the big things that drew researchers to study bats in the first place. Their biology seems almost tailor-made for coexisting with viruses, which is both amazing and a little unsettling.
Jumping into their biology, I've read that bats' immune systems are almost in a league of their own. They don't just fight viruses, they seem to tolerate them.
Yeah, their immune responses are really unique. For example, bats have adapted to keep inflammation low, which helps them avoid the damage that viruses usually cause in other mammals. It's as if their bodies are saying, you can stay, just behave yourself.
That's such a different approach than what we see in humans, where our bodies often go overboard fighting infections. I wonder, does this mean bats are just constantly carrying viruses around?
Pretty much. Because they don't get sick, bats can be long-term hosts for viruses, sometimes carrying them for years. This makes them prime candidates for being reservoirs, even if they look perfectly healthy.
Thinking about that, it makes me realize how their social lives must play a huge part too. Some bat colonies have thousands, even millions, crammed into tiny spaces.
It's pretty intense. When you have that many bats all snuggled together sharing caves, trees, or even buildings, viruses can jump from one animal to another really quickly. One sick bat can set off a chain reaction.
That's a nightmare scenario if you think about it from a disease perspective. Plus, those environments full of droppings and saliva must be perfect for viruses to linger.
Exactly. Those conditions make it easier for pathogens to build up. And since some bats migrate, the risk isn't just local. They can spread viruses to new colonies hundreds of miles away.
Speaking of migration, I'm curious, how does their travel factor into virus outbreaks that affect people?
Well, bats cover huge distances, sometimes crossing continents. On those journeys, they interact with other wildlife and occasionally with humans, especially as we move into their habitats. That's when a virus can make the jump to new species, including us.
It's a little unsettling to think that a single bat could spark an outbreak just by showing up in the wrong place at the wrong time. But at the same time, bats are so important for things like pollination and pest control.
That's the real balancing act. We need bats for healthy ecosystems, but we also have to be mindful of how our actions like habitat destruction raise the risk of viruses spilling over. The challenge is finding ways to protect both public health and these incredible animals.
It's tough. On one hand, bats freak people out, but on the other, they're ecological MVPs. How do we manage that tension?
One approach is better understanding their biology and behaviors, so we can predict and prevent risky encounters. Creating buffer zones between bat habitats and human activity helps too.
That makes sense, almost like setting ground rules for sharing space. What surprised me most is how much of this comes down to people changing their habits, not just focusing on the animals.
Absolutely, and education is key. When communities learn about the benefits bats offer and the real risks, they're more likely to support conservation efforts that keep everyone safer.